Sony recently got in trouble. They got put on blast by a whole bunch of indie publishers who were basically not particularly happy with how they were running, just about anything when it came to their storefront. Lots of accusations that really come down to it just being very annoying to work with them, and also a whole bunch of, sort of pay for play. It's like where Steam is going to work out, you seeing a game based on your history and your preferences, and more of the things on Team PlayStation are paying for visibility. And there was quite a lot to get into. So a lot of indies are pretty damn pissed, and now it seems that Sony are actually trying to repair the situation, which is good. Some of it did seem like Sony trying to make money from it, but some of it also seemed like Sony struggling with very archaic old systems, both literal technological systems, but also just the way they were running things internally. Of course, this is no surprise to people who remember the PSN outage and just general, issues that Sony have had.
Yep, no, their back end has always been terrible as far as it's existed, and they've never really bothered to sit down and fix it. They'll fix it for their own purposes as they need, like with the shuffle to the PS5. But when it comes to indies, it's generally just, sorry, you don't pay Sony's employees' wages, so nothing will get done in your favor. But we appear to be slightly on the mend here.
Yes. So IGN have done a little bit of digging. They've been rummaging about the place, and actually they've been doing investigative journalism lately, which has been actually pretty cool to see.
Sounds good.
Because there's been a void since a few other publications just kind of stopped. So they're doing that.
Doing their job. Wow. That's incredible.
So apparently they're claiming that Sony have been quietly listening behind the scenes to various different complaints regarding PlayStation. Of course, way back in July, a bunch of indie pubs banded together to publicly condemn Sony's apparent indifference to the various different challenges that were being faced on the PlayStation platform. This was never acknowledged, but the IGN report very much indicates that Sony want to deal with this. So, to do a quick TLDR of what the issues are. Basically, overly complex suite of tools and forms alongside unclear processes for getting games on the store. Indie devs also criticizing Sony's poor communication when it came to getting answers, guidance, or fixing issues. And then everybody in question openly recognized the discoverability as an issue across the industry, but that Sony have a few specific issues in that developers reported encountering indifference and even outright hostility when it came to getting help. So then we move on to the 2021 Global Partner Survey results, where basically they identified 3 areas for improvement. So the first one, reducing complexity. That's, their communications, just all those processes. Also greater accessibility, right? This is, as an example, giving all active publishing and developing partners access to better analytics, like sales, engagement, and promotion. Insane that there's issues there. Also improving discoverability, and then modernization in terms of their own tool sets and improving the ticketing system, documentation, and partner support. All right, so apparently these are the issues that have been raised, and then when we actually get into the IGN reporting, Sony are actually taking some action in this apparently. So they are highlighting the Akupara Game CEO David Logan, who has confirmed that their account manager and Sony's head of PlayStation creators both reached out after the initial article, after this stuff blew up. Logan says they were obviously crushed at the news, and it was clear that the account managers at Sony had been working hard for a long time to push through a lot of the ideas that indie developers flagged in our initial discussions. After the articles, that seemed to give a huge boost to initiatives they had already been planning, because rapidly after, Sony started rolling out a bunch of big changes. Their response times have drastically improved. He once had a support ticket open for 9 months, but now the average response times are falling to about 5 days. Most are 24 to 48 hours, and it all feels more fluid and natural now, which is certainly a good thing. Then Ian Garner, the co-founder of Neon Doctrine, whose Twitter actually sparked this entire thing back in July, credited Sony for prominently featuring the studio's most recent release on their YouTube channel. Of course, Sony could just do that to, make it particularly pissed off group happy, but if they're going to be making some genuine changes to discoverability, that would be a good thing. Now, of course, there still are issues, right? So studios have still got to formally be invited by Sony to do a discount for their game. So if you're doing like a big anniversary sale, decent chance you actually won't be able to do that because you just literally won't get it from Sony, because that's just a real pain in the ass. But even there, change apparently is afoot. So David Logan said that he believes the new release section of the PS5 store is going to make up a huge visibility difference because every game gets some time in the spotlight. Certainly my experience of that has been, I can definitely see new releases there.
Yes.
But you certainly do notice that the very polished premium veneer kind of rubs off.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's kind of what it's supposed to do, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one thing that I always find interesting about the PlayStation platform is that they suffer from the same thing that, like, I guess it's, if you look at how they compare to Steam, they've went for the more, even in terms of how they make games and how they publish games, they go very much for the curated approach, whereas Steam went for the user-first approach, which meant that back in, what time? God, I really struggle to remember timelines these times. But maybe 7 or 8 years ago, there was the whole indie rush on Steam after the indie game, the movie was popularized. And then, like, it just got worse and worse and worse. And there were these articles about there's been like 2,000 games on Steam this month or something like that. And that was a big problem where just low quality stuff happened and everyone was like, oh God, it's the fucking video game industry crash of the 1980s again. Oh dear, it's going to happen because low quality stuff's going to flood this store. And Steam went, no. Bear with us. We can solve this. But we're not going to tell anyone to not put their games on our platform. That's not what we're about. And everyone like lambasted them for this, saying, no, your store's full of cheap knockoffs and it's just a bad experience. Then they went so hard on all of their tools that concern seems like a massive thing of the past. Because unless you look at that new release tab, you don't see anything that you aren't going to want to play, basically. Because their quality their algorithms are so strong. Kind of the same way you rarely see a really shitty, boring video on YouTube unless you actually go look for it, because the algorithm stuff's like, oh yeah, we know what you want. And that's like the natural selection is sorted by the algorithm there, whereas Sony curate, but that means that if they don't have a solution to that problem, they don't have a way for you to not see, they don't have a way for you to see things that you might find interesting that aren't $2.99.
Legend of Black Tiger.
Legend of Black Tiger was definitely the worst example of all time. But it's even stuff like, I can't remember any specific names, but there's those games that are like $2.99 and it's just generic anime art and it's a puzzle game or something. And no harm to them, but they're not exactly high quality products. And there's so many of them against the kind of quality indies. Whereas you go to Steam and all you see is quality indies or quality AAA.
And this is where what Ian says continues, because he said he's not, so impressed by, say, like the indie tab, saying it features the usual suspects and there's still no way for a game to prove itself. It has to rely on Sony staff to advocate for it. And then that's the thing where Steam's great, because your game can prove itself on Steam. If it gets the results, Steam will raise it up. Doesn't happen as much in Sony.
No.
And this is obviously something that's going to cost Sony sales. Right? So this is a sort of thing, it's in the best interests of both the platform holder and the the publishers and developers. It's just Sony aren't quite there yet. And then, of course, for consumers, you might think, I don't want a better storefront. I don't want more sales happening at me. I don't mean sales and discounts. I mean, salespeople.
Targeted advertising.
But people log into Steam, they look at the front of Steam and they see a bunch of games that are interesting to them.
Yeah, and
that's actually marketing working in the favor of the consumer, helping them find things they might want.
Yeah, I guess it's a version of, you go into a store and the employee comes up and starts to ask you what you want. Most of the time in real life, you're like, go away, I want to browse. But then Steam is a version of that where the employee shows up and, say it's a clothing store, that employee distinctly knows all of your tastes and your sizes and just goes, here's a selection for today. You're like, shit, this actually owns. Versus Sony, where you have to do the browsing, and the browsing's, it's okay, but generally speaking, I don't remember the last time I scrolled through the PlayStation Store and thought, oh, that looks interesting, I'll buy that. Most of my purchases are targeted on that store, which is a very different experience to Steam.
And then as for, just to finish from him, we as an industry can't let this be a one-time every 4 to 5 month conversation until something bad happens again. So it's just always that thing of, why is it taken for a big news item for these things to be dealt with? And what I'd say there is Sony, you'll make more money with a more optimized store. It's in your best interests. That's why so many of us actually kind of enjoy the process of buying things on Steam.
Yep.
Because it's sometimes kind of like going into a niche shop in the high street that has the things that you like and you enjoy browsing around.
Yep. I guess the way I look at it overall is that the news article or the fact that it broke into the Spectrum was likely just someone who went, someone, because obviously the account managers have been working on stuff. I imagine they just use that as leverage, because this side of Sony seems to be something they are not organizationally focused on at all. They're too busy running PlayStation Studios, getting hardware stuff all good. They're not really focused on their back end more than if it'll do, it'll do. So I think this case is likely the bad thing happened. It kind of, the dam sort of broke, and then the person working at Sony's like, who cares about this stuff? Use that as leverage to get an extra zero put on their budget.
Yeah.
And then I guess that's a case where just need to be very, very, very quick to go, no, this is shit. This is shit, fix it. This is shit, because they probably don't have the organizational ability to fix problems that are like, if they're not looking at it, they're not going to see the problem.
Yeah, and plus too, like their model has relied so much on the big super premium games that they probably haven't had as much internal will or interest in optimizing that sort of thing.
Yep.
But maybe some of this could change, because we have got some of the rumors of a Game Pass competitor coming from Sony. So Sony's renewed attention to the indie partners, is part of a big strategy. Where could it go next? Obviously, Microsoft has had a pretty damn great relationship with indie developers. The whole ID at Xbox thing is like pretty good for getting into. They're all pretty good to work with, from what I understand. And of course, part of that is really helped by Microsoft Game Pass, or Xbox Game Pass, which, if you can get on it, that's like a really, really nice stamp of approval for a game, and a whole bunch of visibility, and of course, a pretty damn nice amount of upfront cash. Absolutely. Which can really be incredible for developers, especially if they're able to get that money a little bit earlier in the development process, because that's going to mean either they can make some more features, or they'll be able to sustain their staff post-launch. Perhaps they can work in their next game, work out their plans a little bit better. So that's a lot of why Game Pass is generally quite well liked.
Yeah.
I mean, especially by those who get on it.
Of course.
I'd say.
Of course.
So Bloomberg have reported that PlayStation is planning to overhaul PS Plus/PS Now, combining them into an all-in-one thing that competes with Game Pass. Tier 1 of this is apparently going to be PS Plus as it is now. Tier 2 will include PS4 and eventually PS5 games, while Tier 3 will include extended demos, game streaming, and a library of games from PS1 to, 3, and then, of course, the PSP as well. Now, if they can bring in some of those PSP games, there's like a few little gems there that people would be interested in. At the very least, there'll be some novelty. And, I mean, there's just a lot of interesting games from the PlayStation back catalog. Yeah. That could be really good.
That's one of the things that I find interesting, that Xbox has a very, very strong argument for their backwards compatibility. It works really well if you own the games, work away, play them. But that's not always the important part for something that I think, obviously based on age alone, the Sony has so much more of an interesting back catalog, which is going to be very difficult when it comes to licensing and stuff like that. But generally speaking, the ability to have those games available will just, that is the biggest game changer I think they could possibly do. Is the problem with it is PS Now and the fact that it's streaming all those old games. But if they could just put it, a lot of work, but almost the same with GOG trying to get licenses for old unsellable PC games and stuff. If they could just sort that stuff out, use a lot of the resources, and then go, hey, here's a service. We've got a pretty functional PS1, 2 emulator and PSP emulator working on the PS5. PS3, you'll need PS Now, but whatever. And they just throw up a bunch of their first parties and whatever third parties they can still have access to. That would just be free money. The amount, like cashing in on that nostalgia in a really, really user-friendly way would be so big. It'd be absolutely massive. But
yeah, now what's interesting is Forbes does not call it a Game Pass competitor, actually.
Yep. And fair points.
Yeah, so they're just sort of suggesting that it's more of a rebrand of existing services. They're not going to put their blockbusters basically there day one. So big improvement to PS Plus, not really some sort of killer blow to Xbox, right? Because a big true Game Pass competitor is going to cost a hell of a lot of money. Again, Microsoft's balance sheet is bigger than Sony's.
Couple of few zeros there, like.
Yeah. Microsoft's a massive corporation, obviously. And then as well, Sony would be conceding so much money if they put their first parties there on launch day. Whereas for Microsoft, they're happy to concede that money.
Yep.
Because for them, it's all about like just market share and growth.
Yeah.
That's kind of like more the model. So watch this space. overall, there's things going on with Sony. It's good to see them actually maybe listen a bit more.
Yeah,
Try to orient themselves a bit better within the space, be a bit more modern. I think one of the things with Sony is, you can trust them to do a really big, high-budget blockbuster like your Tsushimas and stuff. You can trust them to do that, but there's a lot of other aspects to gaming, and I think them paying attention to that would be a good thing.
Yep. I think the only other thing to say about Sony is that they still haven't made any leeway to, or any sort of moves, any direction to get back a lot of the consumer goodwill they've lost through how they dealt with the Japanese side of things.
You're screwed there.
Yeah, they've talked about it, but they haven't done anything yet. So I guess the hope, and it's cope more than hope, but the idea that they are maybe working on stuff like that silently at the background, but that implies there's people who have a place of power and PlayStation who care about that stuff. And it's like the thing when I'm saying about them having all those PS1, PS2 games to rely on. They have so much brand history based on that weird and wonderful stuff that's maybe not blockbusters, but they were blockbusters at the time because they were so interesting and so unique. So I think that's like if they could do that.
If you want your titty games, you got to go to Nintendo. That's the way it's fallen.
What fucking world do we live in? Anyway, yeah. That's the thing. If they could, I know it's such a small part of the market, but it's such an important part of the market and such an important part of their history that if they could,
more like was it Parappa the Rappa and
Parappa the Rappa,
like older.
From their little crazy Japanese studios, like the idea that I guess the creator of Rez isn't running around behind the scenes there getting loads of money and getting to make loads of cool things is really heartbreaking.
Yeah. And
there's so much opportunity for that. That's like the one part that I'm just have every time I'm happy about Sony's work, I just have that massive asterisk in my head going, fuck. You're so close. You're so close. You're so close, but you just need to give Gravity Rush 3, even though 1 and 2 didn't sell very well. They were cool. Fuck you. Make games to be cool, not to make money. Whatever.
Yeah, but Horizon.
Yep.
A lot of sales. Yeah, so basically there you go. Sony are trying a bit harder in these things. We just need to see where it's actually going. The thing is, if Sony try harder, then maybe that'll make Microsoft try even harder, and they have bottomless money. So
nice.
That'll be interesting.
They'll be paying people to go on Game Pass.
Oh, that'll be it next, yeah. Yes, you will walk in and you'll find out that your daily bread and your cornflakes have actually been sponsored by Microsoft, and they have Game Pass, and you'll get them for free in the shop. That's yes.
Oh my God.
Can't wait for my Microsoft Super Noodles.
Honestly, yeah, fair enough. Actually, half the purchases I go to make on Amazon are like, get Xbox Game Pass 30% off with this mouse or monitor or keyboard.
Yeah, buy a drink, get double XP in Halo. That's just the way it is now.
Yeah.
Bit ghastly, but there you go. So that's it from us. That's what's going on with Sony. I mean, hey, they're going to be nicer to indies. We're indies, so we'd like that.
Absolutely.
Goodbye.